Hey, are you new to wine and you'd like to learn more about wine? However, you don't need the pretentious attitudes or the esoteric terms. Or maybe you've been drinking wine for a while, but you haven't really thought about it and you'd really like to know what's going on in the glass. Well, this video is for you. This is Wine 101. Hi, I'm Reggie Narito. I've worked in the wine business for over 30 years, the last 14 as a wine educator. With this Wine 101 video, what I'd like to try to do is answer a most basic question, and that is, what is wine? But before we get started, if you like the content of this video, please consider pressing the like button. And if you'd like to see more videos just like this, please consider pressing subscribe. Now let's do it. Wine has been around for thousands of years. It's the second oldest alcoholic beverage known to man, second only to beer. You can find written evidence throughout ancient history, whether it be the Bible, ancient Sumeria, the ancient Greeks. And why not? It's pretty straightforward to make. I mean, if you got bunches of grapes and put them in a container and smash them all up, and then you put that container outside, eventually the native yeast that you find on the grape skins and even out in the air would begin to feed off the sugar and convert that sugar to alcohol. And you'd have wine. The process of that yeast converting the sugar to alcohol is called fermentation. If I were to put it in formula form, it would look something like this. Sugar plus yeast equals alcohol, CO2, and heat. For our purposes, yeast plus grape juice equals wine. Sounds simple, but there are a few other factors to consider. Sure, you can make wine from pretty much any grapes. However, not all grape varieties are created equal. If you look at the retail shelves, restaurant and hotel wine list, the vast majority of the wines are made from a European grape species called Vitis vinifera. So whether you're talking about Chardonnay, Sauvignon Blanc, Pinot Noir, or Cabernet Sauvignon, those are all Vitis vinifera grape varieties. Now let's take a look at the three different types of wines. The first type of wine is still wine. It makes up by far the largest portion of the market, with over 90% of the wine produced in the world being still wine. And this is probably the most straightforward to make, in that the yeast converts the sugar to alcohol and you have wine, with exceptions of course, like oak aging and so forth. However, this is by far the one that you're most likely to see retail or in restaurants. The second type of wine is sparkling wine. And sparkling wine makes up about 8% of the wine produced in the world. And there are several different ways that you can make sparkling wine, but the one that is most recognized is the traditional method, or as the French call it, méthode champenoise. And basically it's made like still wine, but then once the still wine is completed, what they do is they take an extra step. And what they do is they take a little bit of liquid and they add it into the wine. And that liquid consists of wine, sugar, and yeast. And what happens in the bottle is you get a second fermentation. And that second fermentation, of course, it converts the sugar to alcohol, the yeast does, but you also get CO2 and a little bit of heat. And that CO2 is where you get the bubbles, that fizziness that you get with sparkling wine. The final type of wine is fortified wine. And it is by far the smallest of the three, making up only about 1% of the wine made in the world. The reason why they call it fortified wine is because the wine has been strengthened by the addition of a neutral grape spirit or a brandy to the wine. And they've been doing this for several hundred years. If you go back that far, before the discovery of electricity and the invention of refrigeration, merchants had to find a way to preserve their goods. And with wine, what they did was they would add a brandy to it. The thought process being that if they added something like brandy, which is 40% alcohol, give or take, it would kill off any bacteria or anything else that would spoil the wine. And you could have a fortified wine that is dry, or you could have one that is sweet. It all depends on when you add the brandy. The reason being is because brandy being at 40%, if you add it to a wine while it is still fermenting, at 40% alcohol, it'll effectively kill off all of the yeast. So if you kill off the yeast while it's still fermenting, what you get is you have a wine that's high in alcohol from the brandy, but you also have a wine that is sweet because you've killed off the yeast and it hasn't completed the process of converting that sugar sugar to alcohol. You could also have some that are dry though. If you add the brandy after the fermentation has been completed, you have a dry wine, but you also have a wine that is high in alcohol. So those are the 3 wine styles. I hope you've gone a little bit further in your understanding of wine. Thanks for joining me. Hope to see you again. Peace out.